So welcome back to the episode of 12 Days of Murder. In this case, we're discussing a case out of Canada. This case was actually pretty well known in Toronto back in the day. I wouldn't say it was actually known like in this country. Sadly, in the United States, is actually like not that much covered. And so, but I just thought that it should be covered. And so I hope you like my take on it. And let's just go and get started.
You had your fun, but you're sorry now. You dressed me in white to just lay me down. I would've stayed till death took me out, but then you fucked up and gave me the gun. So I'll give you one more shot.
So of course we start with our killer. We're going to start with the female killer because it says Fatal Female Friday. Melissa was born on January 2nd, 1992 to her parents Zoran and Rachel. Her mother had worked as a nurse in a cookie factory, and her father was a Slavic immigrant who was a mechanic. And so she was actually said to have a younger brother named Nicholas. Melissa had wore braces and glasses and wasn't happy with almost everything about her and actually wanted like plastic surgery in order to fix it, as normal teenagers do. And so she felt that she needed a boyfriend to feel validated, which again, as a lot of teenage girls do. And so she would even monitor her boyfriend's like emails and attack the new girlfriend after they would part. So after she breaks up with the guy, she'll go and attack the new girlfriend, no matter how long it's been after they broke up. And so while attending East York High School, she had met David Bagshaw and had started dating him in March of 2007. And so a little bit about David Bagshaw. David Bagshaw was born on January 5th, 1990 to Ronald in Sydney. His parents were said to have separated when he was about 12 or 13. He was often absent in classes and was suspended for cursing at the teachers multiple times. When he was 14, he was said to have gotten arrested for assaulting his mother, but the charges were dropped after he agreed to take anger management classes. And so between 14 and 15, he started moving back and forth between his parents a lot because Sydney, the mother, was apparently suffering from several strokes and couldn't take care of herself. And so at 15, he wound up staying in a group home for it said 3 months and 5 months, but he was said to have stayed there for several months, so we know that for sure. And so David's father, Ronald, had warned him of Melissa for seeing who he really was because he wasn't a teenager, he was older, he could see her true side, her true intentions, I guess you could say. And so during their relationship, David was actually said to be abusing Melissa physically while she was dating him, while at the same time she was apparently controlling him. David had apparently mentioned to her that he thought that Stefanie was pretty. And so Stefanie Rengel was born sometime in June 1993 to Patricia and Adolfo Rengel, who was a Venezuelan immigrant who was a police officer with Toronto, Canada, where this story takes place. And so both her biological parents were cops, and so her parents would divorce when she was about 6 years old. Patricia would remarry James Hung, who was Stefanie's stepfather, in the year 2000. Adolfo would remarry a woman named Maureen, and so Stefanie had younger brothers, Ian, Patrick, and Eric. And so Stefanie was apparently the oldest of the four. And so she had attended Rosedale School of Arts. Both of her parents were said to be somewhat strict regarding internet access, as they should be, regarding their child. And so Stefanie and David had actually only dated for a couple weeks 2 years before. When Stefanie and David had dated, she was 12 and he was 15. And so they would go get pizza at the park near the house where it all started. Near the house. So it started off all innocent. And then at one point, David had apparently left a voicemail on Stefanie's home phone saying that he basically wanted oral sex from her. And then Patricia, Stefanie's mom, had heard it and said, you need to break up with him. Understandably. So then after some resistance, as you can imagine, because she is an adolescent, she agrees and then basically moves on from David. So then, of course, with David telling Melissa that he thought that Stefanie was pretty, because, she was a pretty young woman, this makes Melissa look at pictures of her on Facebook, and she starts to get insecure of Stefanie, even though her and David are no longer together. Stefanie herself would even tell one of Melissa's cousins that David was bad for her, which he was, and had actually flirted with other girls behind her back. So not only is he being abusive, he is also being unfaithful. So Melissa's parents would tell her to end the relationship. Melissa had then come up with the idea herself to actually kill Stefanie. On May 22nd, 2007, she would accuse him of talking to Stefanie, which apparently he wasn't. So would then tell David that he must kill Stefanie. And so on October 20th, 2007, David would call Stefanie to lure her outside, but he didn't go through with it. He even told her that Melissa had told him to stab her. He even gave her his phone and said that if Melissa tried to call, tell her that he tried to kill her, but he couldn't go through with it. And so then Stefanie ran inside to Patricia and told her what happened. And then she calls Melissa and tells her to stay away from Stefanie. So then Melissa tells Patricia to stop spreading rumors about her sleeping around boys, which we didn't even know if that's even true. And Patricia would say that Stefanie just wanted Melissa to know that her boyfriend was cheating. So basically do the right thing, let her know, hey, your man's a little man whore. And so Patricia and James would return the phone to David's mother, Sydney, and asked her to keep David away from Stefanie. And so Sydney had agreed, and Patricia had agreed apparently not to involve the police. And so on December 15th, Melissa kept nagging David about killing Stefanie. He would say that he needed a mask and gloves so that he wouldn't get recognized by anybody, specifically Stefanie's parents. And so Melissa had replied to go get a leotard then. And so then on December 17th, she basically threatened to be with someone else if he didn't do it. On New Year's Eve 2007, David was outside Stefanie's house while she was in with the family. A neighbor had spotted him, so he was said to have actually left after the neighbor spotted him. And so David and Melissa had called each other 65 times that night. He'd even called Stefanie a few times, but does not know if they even talked on the phone that night. And so the next day, it is now New Year's Eve 2008. David would call Melissa, but he wouldn't hear from her apparently until like 3 p.m. And when they did finally speak, they spoke for maybe 15 minutes. And Melissa was actually said to have been talking to another boy at the time. And so at 5:51 p.m., he would text Melissa that he was on the way to Stefanie's house. And so then she called at 6 p.m. exactly and 6:04 p.m. And so on that day, Stefanie had actually went to a friend's house and would eventually return to her house. Around this time, she was actually said to have been babysitting her younger brother, Ian. And so she would have called at 6:08 p.m. And the caller was blocked, but she answered anyway. And the guy on the other end said that she was Steve. And she actually had an ex named Steve Lopez, but she had just broke up with 2 months prior, so she thought this was him. And so, however, it was actually David basically telling her to come out to meet him. And so she would put on the sweater that her mother had got her for Christmas and basically came outside. So then while she's coming out, David is on the phone with Melissa telling her that, like, Stefanie actually came outside. So I guess he believed that Stefanie, like, wouldn't come outside because it was cold and there was a lot of snow out. So then David was hiding in the bushes and he would come out to attack her with an 8-inch knife 6 times. So he stabs her, not like comes out 6 different times, but he stabs her 6 different times. So just to clarify, one of the stabs basically went through the sweater that Patricia, one of the cuts would actually cut her ribs and her stomach, making her stomach contents spill into her perinatal cavity. And so obviously that's very serious. And so David would flee the scene, going to a friend's house to bury the jacket he was wearing in the snow in their backyard. And so he had already threw away the knife at this point. Melissa had waited 15 minutes after David got off the phone with her to call Stefanie's phone and was happy when she didn't get an answer. And so David would take a cab to her place to collect his reward, and he texts her that he loves her. And so then Melissa has him reenact what happened with her being Stefanie and him being himself. And so then once that's done, they didn't have sex because, I forgot to mention this, she basically held sex away from him if he didn't kill Stefanie. And so Stefanie is actually said to try to walk back to her house when she fell. And so a man by the name of Gavin Shoebottom, who apparently was an accountant, was driving by and noticed her, he had noticed her and stopped to help her and called 911. And so 911 would tell him to apply pressure to her wound and ask her who did it. She would say Bagshaw, but Gavin had told the police bags, because apparently that was all he heard. And so paramedics arrive and she is rushed to the hospital, where she is sadly pronounced dead at just 14 years old. And so Gavin was actually new to the area, delaying the ambulance by a couple minutes. Despite what you may be thinking, they said that even if they had got there, had he known the area well enough, she still would have died because of how serious the stabs were. And so then one of Melissa's friends, not exactly known who, had told her on Facebook that Stefanie was dead and basically asked, aren't you worried you might be a suspect? So then Melissa would tell her no, and saying that she only told that particular friend and David that she wanted Stefanie dead and denied that she was responsible, and basically said that her and David had just had sex that particular day. And so then Ian, Stefanie's brother, would call Patricia to let her know that there had been a shooting in the area. I don't know where he heard a shooting, but okay. So then Patricia and James have been visiting James' parents' house. She would call Stefanie and she didn't answer, so obviously she gets worried. So then Patricia and James would come back to their house to see the police. She goes up to them and says she can't find her daughter, and then asks who it was whose body this they found. So the police ask, like, how old is the daughter? Patricia says 14. The police say that she looks about 20. This does not ease her concern because even though she was 14, she could easily be mistaken as 20. In fact, I actually thought she was in her 20s when she died, when I first looked at the picture. Because I didn't know she was 14. And so police would take her to the hospital where Stefanie was, and so this would sadly be where she is identified. So it was confirmed that the reason why they were out on the street was because of her daughter. And so at 2 a.m. on January 2nd, so the following day, after talking to several of Stefanie's family and friends, police would go to Melissa, take her into questioning with her mother along with her. While Melissa is being questioned, David would be arrested at his house. Both of their computers are taken to be investigated. Melissa would be charged with first-degree murder after confessing that it was her idea. She would say that she was mad that Stefanie was spreading rumors about her being promiscuous. Weeks after the murder, when the snow had melted, police decided to go for the murder weapon, and it was actually said to have been found sticking in the ground. And so at trial, her lawyers would say that all the conversations that they had regarding killing Stefanie were jokes and that she wasn't responsible and that she wasn't even there. Melissa would end up being seen by a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. They were both found guilty of first-degree murder. Melissa would get life with no parole for 7 years. David would get life with no parole for 10 years. In 2018, Melissa was granted 6 months of day parole. Because a relationship was the reason why she was in jail, she had to report any new relationships that she may have gotten. So basically not to repeat the offense that had happened that got her in there. And so the following year, she would be brought back after the parole board found out she was involved in a secret love triangle. And so what happened was, after moving into a halfway house, she would meet two men who were friends through a program that was designed to help reform offenders and back into society. She would start dating one of them and tell the other one that she wasn't sexually satisfied, so she started fooling out the other one too. And so she basically got the men to turn on each other, and so then one of their probation officers found out, and that's how it was revealed. And so Melissa would say that she knew it was wrong to hide her relationships, but denied the love triangle. However, she would drop another bombshell that the ex-boyfriend that she had before David, she apparently had told him to kill a girl just because the two of them had talked to each other. So on August 19, 2020, Melissa was actually denied day parole. In 2013, David would be sentenced to 2.5 years with assault of a deadly weapon and assault of bodily harm to another inmate. It was also said that he was involved in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member and lied about being the father to the fiance's kids on legal documents. However, he would get his secondary school diploma, and it is not known if David has ever applied for parole since his eligibility in 2018. So yeah, that was the case of the murder of Stefanie Rengel, a very tragic case, not very well known, but I thought it should be spread the word out again since the anniversary of her death just occurred like 15 years ago yesterday, because I'm recording this on the 2nd. And so I just thought, yeah, that's another one for the books, and I'll see you fellas in the next one. Bye.
That you're sorry now. You dressed me in white to just lay me down. I would've stayed till death took me out, but then you fucked up and gave me the gun. So I'll give you